All right, so we're going to be looking at Exodus, and the first text here is going to be Exodus chapter 2. We're jumping into Exodus chapter 2. We'll see how much time we have tonight, but Exodus chapter 2, we're going to look at verses 1 through 10 to begin with. And it says this, now a man from the house of Levi went and took his wife, took as his wife a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket made of bulrushes and dabbed it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the riverbank. And his sister stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her young women walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the girl went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. When the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses because she said, "I drew him out of the water." All right. So what are we told in these first few verses? What's going on here in chapter 2?
They're defying Pharaoh and having the sons killed. She's went ahead and had a male baby, and she's trying to do what she can to preserve its life.
Okay. All right. Yeah. She's they're doing what they shouldn't do. They're defying Pharaoh and his commands. Absolutely. What else is going on in this section?
Well, I have a question as to whether maybe they knew that Pharaoh's daughter went and bathed at that location on the river, and that's why they took the baby there.
That's possible. Now, that even if that was true, first of all, we don't know, but even if that was true, there's no indication that Pharaoh's daughter would show pity on him that we know of. We just don't know. What we do know is that Moses' mother was in some ways defying Pharaoh, right? Because she wouldn't kill him. She wouldn't just throw him into the Nile, at least for a few months. And then she kind of complies with the decree to throw the child into the Nile River, but she creates for him a safety raft and puts him in the Nile and among the reeds. I don't know what she's thinking. I don't know why she's doing that, other than she wants to save the baby's life. But she's kind of, I don't know, maybe she's thinking if somebody says something, I can say, well, I did throw him into the Nile. I just threw him in the Nile in a safety raft, like a technicality of the law. Nobody ever said I couldn't put him in a boat. That I don't know. But she puts him in the Nile there. But kind of basically what's going on here is we have the birth of Moses. We've kind of talked about that. We have his mother hiding him for a few months, and then she places him in a basket and places him in the Nile. And obviously, we know that his sister, Moses' sister, is there as well. And she kind of keeps an eye on where things are going.
James, of course, we also know We also know the tribe that Moses is from now, with the tribe of Levi, and that's where the priests come from.
Yes, that's absolutely right. That's right. So we've got the tribe name there as well. Go ahead. Was that you, Tim?
It is something I've never noticed before, and I don't want to be reading in something that's not there. I know that, Pharaoh, by his directive right now, these babies are being killed. But I noticed in verse 2, my version says, when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. And I was taking from that, perhaps if he wasn't a fine child, she wouldn't have taken the risk.
Maybe.
Why make that?
Yeah, I'm not sure you can make that leap. But it is interesting that there's something about him that, and here's all it could be, right? If you have a child, there's not too many parents who look at their children when they're born and think, that's pretty ugly. That's pretty disgusting. Usually parents are pretty, especially moms, they see their children when they're born and they love them, even if they're full of blood and nastiness and all that kind of stuff. It could really just be, and again, we don't fully know, but it could just be, this is what mothers do. This is the feeling that mothers get. And so she has a child. We know she has other children, but she has Moses. The decree is to throw the male children away. He's fine in her eyes, beautiful, wonderful. There's a connection there anyways. And she's willing to do whatever needs to be done to try to save his life. It seems without putting everybody in jeopardy. She's going to hide him and do all that. And it seems like she's pretty much forced at the end to kind of comply with this. Yeah, I'm not sure you could push it much more beyond that kind of thing. Good question, though. Good thought.
I'm online with our Bible study.
So let me ask you this. Where is God in these events? In the first 10 verses, where is God in this?
God had a plan.
Okay, but where do we see God? Where is he?
He is not directly involved at this point.
That's right. We don't actually see God overtly. We don't see him. It's not like it says, and then God's mighty hand swept across the waters of the Nile, and it didn't say anything like that. Is God there, and is he working behind the scenes?
I think he's always there and always working behind the scenes.
Okay, absolutely. So what do we call it when God is unseen but yet still working? What do we call that? Where there's not this big miraculous event that's going on. He's not parting rivers. People aren't doing miracles. This is very ordinary. If you read the text, it's very ordinary. This is life. A guy and a girl meet, they have a child. They get married, they have a child, that kind of stuff. This is ordinary life. What do we call it?
Providence.
We call it providence. Absolutely. And how would you define providence? What is providence?
All things work together for good for those that love the Lord.
All right, that's a great text to talk about providence. I looked at a couple dictionaries just to see what they had to say, and one of them said it's God's activity throughout history in providing for the needs of human beings, especially those who follow him in faith. And then there was another dictionary that said providence is generally used to denote God's perceiving and governing all things by means of second causes. And what that means is he's not directly acting in big miraculous ways. He's directing affairs, he's working, he's doing things, but he's doing things, as we would say, kind of behind the scenes. And we don't really know how he does that, but as Mike pointed out, all things work together for the good of those who love God and called according to his purposes. But the real thing that I want to kind of impress upon you here is the ordinariness of what's going on. Now, certainly the Israelites, the Hebrews here are in captivity, they're slaves, but this is just ordinary life. If you were to read, there's no miracles going on here. There's nothing. It's just guy meets a girl, they get married, they have children. Now they're slaves, so there's some, hardships and all of that. But we don't see the hand of God visible in this. Very important. Think about the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth, we don't see these big miraculous things, loaves of fishes being multiplied. It's an ordinary life. It's difficult life, but how many of us have difficult lives? It's just ordinary life. Hardships come and go. People get married. They have moments of joy. They have moments of frustration. They have moments of trials. And yet God's behind the scenes. All right, so where does Moses end up being raised initially in the text? Where does he end up being raised?
With his mother.
For 3 months, he was with his mom.
That's right, with his birth mother. We was right with his parents. He's back in the house. It's only after he grows up and he's able to kind of be weaned and all of that he enters Pharaoh's daughter's house. But he ends up right back where he came from. Interesting thing going on there. Who's trying to kill the Hebrews?
Pharaoh.
Pharaoh is. It's not a trick question. Right? Pharaoh's trying to kill the Hebrews. Whose house does Moses end up living in?
Pharaoh.
Say it. There you go. Pharaoh. It's Pharaoh's household. Here we can see providence, right? Again, it's not miraculous, but here, providence, we can kind of get a grip here. What is God doing, though, in all of this? What's God doing with this?
Well, he's getting Moses
learning
where he
the
wants
ways.
him to be.
All right, one at a time. Mike first, and then Tom.
Well, he's getting Moses where God wants him to be.
Okay, he's getting Moses where he needs to be, where he wants him to be. Tom?
He was learning the ways of Pharaoh, and I think later on that's going to be important because he has a better understanding of how Pharaoh will react to some of the things that are going to happen later.
That's right. He is learning the ways of the Egyptians. He's learning the ways of the court. I mean, he is being educated, right? Hebrews talks about that. He's educated in the ways of the Egyptians, of Egypt and Pharaoh and all of that. All along, God is protecting Moses by placing him in the very care of the one who is trying to kill the Hebrews. Pharaoh, in a real sense, was raising the very man who was going to lead God's people out of Egypt. Pharaoh is protecting, nurturing, caring for, educating, and raising up the very one who is going to lead God's people out. One man said this, I thought this was great. One man said, Pharaoh might have come home after a long day of killing Hebrew babies and said, "Where is my grandson Moses? I want to play with my grandson." I mean, he's being raised in the very villain's household, you could say, but he's protected by being in that very position. And as has already been mentioned, there's a lot of things that God is doing through this man. Again, it's all providence. It's all behind the scenes. But the very Pharaoh who's trying to kill these people is raising up the one, helping to mature and educate the one who's going to lead God's people out. Somebody says, God seems to have a sense of humor or something going on here. Places Moses right in the very lap of the one who's trying to kill all these people. All right, so can God do wonderful things? Can God do wonderful things through and in spite of the evils of men.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We all say amen. We all say right on. Here is one of those examples of that. Do we always see God working?
No.
We don't. That's what providence is. That's what we're talking about. But is he working through all things?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Romans
Yeah.
8:28, right?
I think sometimes, though, when you look back on your life and you don't see God working, you can look back and see where he was.
Oh, sure. Hindsight's 2020, right? We could go
Yeah.
back and we could say God was doing something through this, but in the very midst of it, I mean, think about this situation,
Sure.
right? There's no miracles. This life that these people are living is hard. They think they're going to lose their child. They have to throw him into the Nile. Now they come up with a scheme as to try to protect him or whatever. Then he gets taken away. Is he going to be killed by Pharaoh's daughter? We don't know. No, he's not. Oh, he ends up back in the household with his birth mother. And so the point is, here is a great example of how God works providentially behind the scenes. It's something we need to get a grasp of. We need to get a hold of this kind of thing because God is still working today. It might look bad. It might look like you're at the end of your ropes. It looked bad in Moses' day when he was born and all the children and all that were being killed and murdered and all of that. It looks bad, but God is in the midst of all of this. He's going to bring good out of it. Is it easy to see? It's not easy to see. It's hard to see, especially when we're in the midst of it. But the one thing we need to get a grip on, we need to grasp, is that God has not left us. God is not, where's God in the midst of my sorrows and my trials and my struggles? He's in there with us. He's doing something in the midst of all of it. He's going to work good out of it. How? I don't know, but he does. All right, let's press on as our time is fleeting. All right, Exodus chapter 2, 11 through 25 says, one day when Moses had grown up, he went out of to his people and he looked on their burdens and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, behold, two Hebrews were struggling together. And he said to the man in the wrong, why do you strike your companion? He answered, who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill us as you killed the Egyptian? And Moses was afraid and thought, surely the thing is known. When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flocks. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them and watered their flock. When they came home to their father Reuel, he said, how is it that you have come home so soon today? They said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds and even drew water for us and watered the flock. He said to his daughters, then where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread. Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. She gave birth to a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, I have been a sojourner in the foreign land. During those many days, the king of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God, and God heard their groanings, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the people of Israel, and God knew. All right, so what did Moses observe about his people in verses 11 through 15?
He observed their hard labor.
Right. He observed their hard labor. They were poorly treated. What else? Was there abuse going on?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So he saw that they were poorly treated. He saw that they were abused. That's what he's seeing. It's pretty clear. He sees that. Now, how does Moses enact his own form of justice?
Kill the Egyptian.
Yeah. He murders the guy, kills the guy. What happened as a result of Moses taking the law into his own hands?
Got in trouble.
He definitely got in trouble.
He got a reputation.
He got a reputation. He got in trouble. And he was rejected by his own people, right? His own people didn't respect him, right? The very next day, he even though he's defending the Hebrews, he tries to kind of mediate a situation, and they reject him. Who are you? Are you going to kill me too? What are you going to do? So he has to flee Egypt. He's afraid. He's afraid he's going to be punished. And so he definitely flees the area. Do you ever see injustices in the world? Do you ever see wrongs and you want to take the law into your own hands? Or do you ever see people in our society doing those kinds of things, seeing what they consider as injustice and then taking the law into their own hands?
In the news all the time.
Yeah, sure. And listen, let's be honest. Let's be honest. We see some horrible things, and we might be tempted to think, I wish I could take care of that. Maybe you're better than me. But on occasion, I see abuses. I see injustices. I see innocent children and people being wronged and abused. And sometimes I think, lock me in the room with them for a little while. It's not the right thing. I'm just saying, I'm confessing. I admit, I have those moments where I'm tempted to want to think that kind of thing, where I'm tempted to want to take the law into my own hands. Maybe you never think that way. Moses thought that way, and we definitely see that happening in our society. Are we as Christians under the new covenant in Jesus' blood ever called to kill people that we feel are in the wrong, or blow up buildings or things like that?
No.
No, not at all, right? Are we to wage war in this world?
Yes.
How do we do it? Do we do it like Moses? How do we wage war in this world?
Well, we do it through the gospel for one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We do it through the gospel. We're running out of time. I'm not sure how much time I've got left. Under 10 minutes. Let me give you a couple scriptures. 2 Corinthians 10, 3 through 5, and Ephesians 6, 10 through 18. Now, Ephesians 6, 10 through 18 is the one that talks about waging war against, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, principalities, powers. We wrestle against spiritual forces of evil, talks about putting the whole armor of God on. 2 Corinthians 10, 3 through 5 says, for though we walk in the flesh, we do not wage war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but of divine power to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God and take every thought captive to obey Christ. So we certainly do wage a war. We simply don't wage it the way the world wants to, and we don't do what Moses did, taking the law into our own hands, trying to undo justices by our own strength and our own power and killing people, things of that nature. All right, homework question. I know we're kind of running through the end here, but we're going to get cut off. So the homework question is, how can you fight the good fight and wage war against all the wicked injustices in this world, in your life, in the lives of others you know, but do it according to the texts that we looked at, that I read to you in the New Testament. 2 Corinthians 10, 3 through 5, and Ephesians 6, 10 through 18. That's what I want you to think about this week. As you see injustices in this world, I want you to think of a couple things. First, I want you to think of the providence of God. Where is God in the midst of my suffering, in the suffering of the world? He's right in the middle of it. We might not be able to see him working, but he's always working. And the second thing is, how can we wage war and do it in a way that gives God glory and honor? What are the weapons that we use? How do we do that? I want you to think about those things this week.